Good evening, everyone. Did you hear that? Yeah. Well, good evening, and my name is Bob Fisher. I have the distinct privilege of serving as president at Belmont University, and on behalf of Belmont and the Tennessean and NewsChannel 5, we want to welcome you here tonight. We're so excited to be the place where you've come to hear our candidates discuss important issues. We want to be that place. We were that place in 2008 for the presidential debate. If you have any influence, we want to be that place in the fall of 2020. And we're on a short list, so we're trying not, the main thing now is don't mess it up. So guys, don't mess it up. It's hard enough for me to not mess it up. But it is a privilege to be a place where people come together to discuss important issues. At Belmont, I can't tell you how important Nashville is to us. It's a huge reason why we've been able to grow and prosper over the years. If people ask me what's happening, why is Belmont being able to grow, it's Nashville, Tennessee. And we've had great leadership in our mayors. And I think tonight we're going to have an opportunity to make decisions about our future leaders. So I'm excited to be here myself, Judy and I, and we're excited to have our partners here. Judy's counting how many times I'm saying excited, and I'll hear that when I get down there. Thank you, Judy. I can see you're four times I'm excited. But I truly am, and without any further excitement from me, let me pitch this to Rory Johnson, NewsChannel 5, and David Plazas, who is the opinion and engagement editor at the Tennessean.
Thank you. Good to hear. Thank you. You want to stand up? Thank you. We can stand up. Can you hear us? You can hear us from our lav mics. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Good evening, everybody. And one thing that we definitely want to tell you is if you have your phones, put it on mute or silence, please.
Yes.
It's the first rule tonight.
So as we lead up to the live broadcast on NewsChannel 5, we're about 5 minutes out. The candidates will come out and take their place ahead of time, and you may applaud when they come out. We won't be on the air. Once we get on the air, we are going to reintroduce the candidates. That's when you'll be able to applaud. That's the only time we want to hear from you. We have 1 hour, 4 candidates, and it will go by quickly, and we want to give them as much time as possible to answer our questions. So the less we hear from the audience, the better. Just turn on your ears and listen, and we really appreciate you being here.
And remember, the official hashtag for tonight is NashMayor19. So we hope that you tweet and post these on Instagram and Facebook and other social media. We definitely want to hear from you. And thank you so much, Rory. It's always a pleasure to see you. We last saw each other at Cumberland University for the Senate debate.
We're excited to be here, and we hope you enjoy it. And give us a few minutes. You'll hear a countdown. You'll get to see all the behind-the-scenes stuff, and we'll open, and we'll go on the air live. You all ready?
Hey.
All right. Thank you. I believe the candidates will be making their way out here momentarily. Yeah, let's bring out our candidates. John Ray Clemens, Dr. Carol Swain, John Cooper, and Mayor David Briley.
Are we off?
Good evening, y'all.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We'll get a countdown. We've got a couple minutes, so relax.
All right.
All right.
Enjoy. Gotcha. IFB test.
I can hear you.
Three minutes away, everybody. Forgot to mention, it's a random order how they're standing on stage. It was drawn earlier, and each question, it'll be a random order in how they'll answer. But everyone will get a minute until a lightning round at the end will be 30-second answers, and we'll wrap it up, okay? 2 minutes.
Live from the campus of Belmont University, this is Election 2019, Nashville Mayoral Debate. Hosted by the Tennessean, NewsChannel 5, and Belmont University. Now, here are tonight's moderators, Rory Johnston and David Plazas.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, and welcome to the first televised debate of the 2019 Nashville mayoral election.
Before we begin, we want to go over some of tonight's rules. All four candidates will be given the chance to answer each question. They will have 1 minute to respond.
In the interest of time and fairness, the audience has been instructed to remain quiet, except for right now when we welcome the candidates. We begin with State Representative John Ray Clemens. Next is retired Vanderbilt professor Dr. Carol Swain.
Next, at-large Metro Councilman John Cooper. And Nashville Mayor David Briley.
Candidates, welcome. We're glad to see you here, and we'll begin with this. A recent Vanderbilt poll found 45% of people think Nashville is moving in the wrong direction. That is a 23% higher than just 4 years ago. So the question is, do you think Nashville is moving in the right direction? And what's one thing the next mayor must focus on to keep the city moving forward? We'll begin with you, Mayor Briley.
Well, thank you for having me tonight. Thanks to the city of Nashville. Thanks to Belmont University, the Tennessean, Channel 5 for hosting this debate. I believe fundamentally Nashville is going in the right direction, and that's based on talking to a lot of people, not just here in Nashville, but around the country. That's why it's so heavily recruited as a place for businesses to come. But that doesn't mean we don't need to change. And in fact, as mayor for the last 15 months, I've focused on the things we do need to change. I started with a budget that Councilman Cooper had sponsored. That budget had spent all of our reserves as legally allowed, had made promises on pay raises, and set the tax rate at the wrong level. I had to work through that. I got us through a budget cycle without raising taxes. In fact, 2 budget cycles without raising taxes. I got pay raises to our employees this year. Yes, we're going in a good direction. There are things we need to focus on. There's change that needs to take place. I've been doing that as mayor for the last 15 months.
Thank you, Mayor. Representative Clemens.
Right now, we're experiencing unprecedented prosperity across our city. but too many families and communities are being left behind. I've held kitchen cabinet talks with families all across our entire community and sat down at their kitchen tables and talked about the main issues of concern to them. And the same three issues keep coming up: public education, transportation, and affordable housing. Public education will be my top priority. I look forward to discussing each and every one of these issues with you tonight and sharing my vision for how we're going to move Nashville forward together.
Dr. Swain.
We're absolutely moving in the wrong direction. That's why I'm running for mayor. I've never wanted to serve in a political office. I was drafted because the people felt that they needed someone who had courage and integrity that would stand up for the right thing. Our public safety officers, whether we're talking about police, firefighters, or dispatchers, they have been neglected. They're short-staffed. We don't have enough affordable housing for people who work, and we have the traffic and transit problems and even more. So I'm running for mayor because Nashville needs an outsider who's not tied to the old boys network, who will do what's right for the people and not for corporations and for the wealthy who have benefited from the decisions made by the previous mayors, including the current one.
All right, Councilman Cooper.
Thank you, and I want to thank Belmont for inviting us here. Well, we will be on the right direction if we make the right changes. And the right changes begin with restoring trust in government, with plans such as a transportation plan and an affordable housing plan that people believe are going to make a difference in their lives and do make a difference in their lives. Now, we need to invest in neighborhoods, and we need to stop the past practices of kind of really only favoring one neighborhood over the rest. I'm sure we'll talk about that more later tonight. But it is true, I'm not for raising taxes. I consistently have not been for raising taxes because we do have surpluses in other pockets of government, and we need to exhaust all of those resources and bring them back and pay for improvements in neighborhoods before we can make progress as a community going forward.
Home prices in Nashville have skyrocketed in recent years, yet the city's property tax rate is at an historic low. Last week, the council tried to pass a property tax hike but fell one vote short. Would you support an increase in property taxes next year to fund schools and give Metro workers a raise? And we'll start with Dr. Swain.
Absolutely not, because revenues are up 23% between 2015 and 2019. The revenues there was an estimated $440 million. We need to find out where the money is going, where the waste is. And so I don't believe we need to raise our property taxes. We need to cut spending. We do not have a revenue problem in the city. We have a spending problem because we have leaders who can't say no. They make irresponsible decisions. They spend like drunken sailors.
Councilman Cooper.
Well, thank you. Revenues are up $350 million in the last 4 years. That is a lot, right? We do need to go get management savings, and there are other sources of revenue than just the property tax. The property tax is the easiest source of revenue to government, but there are sustained revenue increases that can be garnered back to the city. We made investments in the tourism, in the development. Now we need to bring some of that back for our vitally needed services that's currently being borne entirely by the general fund. Now, there are management savings, there are revenue savings, but consistently for 4 years, I have fought and worked to make this possible. On August 1st, along with the mayor's election, there's going to be a referendum on the ballot requiring, for really the first time, accurate debt reporting and performance metrics by departments. Once we begin to evaluate the efficiency of departments, then we're going to be able to make the changes that we need going forward.
Thank you, Councilman. Mayor Briley.
So I oppose the tax increase that the council considered on Tuesday. That's because, to a great extent, it hurt Metro employees. It would have raised the property tax on every policeman and firefighter in Nashville and not given them one additional penny in increased salary. For most teachers, they would have gotten a 1% raise and had their property taxes increased. It was the wrong way to go about addressing compensation for our employees, which is critical to me. That's why I've asked the school board to come up with a full-blown assessment of what teacher pay should be. I've asked the HR department to look at our compensation structure so that we can address the problems with police pay in particular. And I am committed in next year's budget to making sure we have the revenue necessary to fund both of those plans.
Thank you. Representative Clemens?
This past week, Nashville families lost to the status quo. The Briley Cooper budget deprived working families of a better quality of life. Now, I'm the only candidate on this stage who supported the Vercher-Mendez budget. That's because real leadership is needed in Nashville, a willingness to stand up and fight for what is right rather than what's politically convenient. Now, it's truly unfortunate that we found ourselves in a position where the most fiscally responsible option was a property tax rate increase. But that's a direct result of years of fiscal mismanagement and irresponsibility. As your mayor, I am fully committed to doing what is necessary to fully fund our public schools, address affordable housing, and build out a 21st century transportation infrastructure system.
Thank you very much.
Candidates, over the last 20 years or so, the city, we know, has focused on downtown development, many say at the expense of our neighborhoods. Do you think the economic incentives the city has used to lure businesses to town have gone too far? And we'll begin with you, Councilman Cooper.
Well, incentives may have a place, but there's a moment when you need to wake up and realize that they're really not necessary. And corporations are good at taking advantage of an inefficient market. And the reality is, Nashville went out of its way in Chapter 1, or fairly recently, to go all in recreating a downtown. Now that day is over. And the taxes collected between tourism taxes, hotel taxes, and sales taxes that are collected by the Convention Center Authority have ballooned. The Music City Center will have a $60 million cash surplus. It's projected we'll have $190 million of unrestricted cash. Great, that is success, but we need to learn from that and adjust what we are doing. Now, as for incentives, we need to have them focused more on the parts of the city that use them for small business and to get companies here that employ our own people as workers.
Mayor Briley.
So I agree with Councilman Cooper to a great extent that we have to be prudent when we offer incentives. I presented two to the council. I think Councilman Cooper voted for both of them. But today I was in a position to announce a new relocation to Nashville. Almost 500 jobs coming from California. Pilot.com, it's a software company, it's a tech company, and we didn't offer any incentives for that. That's the kind of change we need in our city. We need to be focused on bringing good jobs to town. We need to know we're a great place to relocate. Now, there'll be moments where we decide, like Councilman Cooper and I decided with Amazon and Alliance Bernstein, that those made sense. But there'll be other opportunities where we don't have to. Now, when it comes to investing in our neighborhoods, one of the first things I did as mayor was to go over to Fort Negley and make sure that the development that was proposed there came to an end, because we needed to protect that area for green space for this community. That's the kind of change we need in Nashville. That's the kind of mayor I've been for the first 15 months and that I will be for the next 4 if I'm reelected.
Representative Clements.
Nashville is a great city. It's time we start acting like one. We should be negotiating from a position of strength. We shouldn't be sitting down at the table to negotiate with million-dollar corporations and pushing all our chips across the table and giving them whatever they want just to come to Nashville. These negotiations should be two ways. We should be demanding things from these companies that want to benefit from all the great things about our city. We should be getting investments in public education and affordable housing and infrastructure. They're going to put additional burdens on our city, and they need to invest and be good corporate citizens. Additionally, moving forward, we need to show our locally owned small businesses just as much love and provide them with these incentives that we've been showing corporations.
Dr. Swain.
Nashville needs a mayor who can be a tough negotiator. In the deals that have been cut by the previous mayors, they're pretty much giving away the store to lure companies here. They don't have to do that. As mayor, what I would do is sit down with those companies to make sure that they were showing us what they can do. And so it's not just about giving them everything to get them here. They have to become a part of our community, invest in our community, invest in our schools, invest in our workforce. We have just been given too much of the taxpayer incentives. I think we need to focus on our local businesses. We need to focus on the neighborhoods, and it shouldn't be about the big corporations and the people coming from out of state. What about the people in state and the people that are already in the city that are part of what has made Nashville the great city that it is?
Thank you.
Along those same lines, Nashville is often called the It City. We've done a remarkable job of catering to visitors, but many Nashvillians say we haven't done enough for the people who actually live here. How would you, as mayor, make this an It City for residents as well? Representative Clemens.
Well, I'm less concerned about keeping this being the It City. I'm more concerned about us becoming that city. That city that continues to neglect entire parts of our community. For too long, neighborhoods like Bordeaux and North Nashville, Whites Creek and Antioch, and other parts of this city have not seen the types of investments that downtown has benefited from. The entire community is not benefiting from the boom during this time of unprecedented prosperity. The question I would like to ask those who are currently serving in metro government is, what's your explanation for completely ignoring these communities?
Thank you. Dr. Swain?
Well, it's certainly the case that not all of Nashville has prospered. We have bike lanes in certain communities where only 19% of the city actually has a sidewalk. And we know that the pedestrian deaths are more likely to occur when people are walking along the highway, walking along the road. To me, that's unacceptable, and we need to invest in the infrastructure of the whole city. And there is a disparity. And when I travel around, and I've spoken to lots of people, I mean, people in Donaldson, people in Bellevue, Bordeaux, North Nashville, they do feel neglected because they're paying taxes and they're not getting the benefits. There's too much focus on downtown and certain neighborhoods where there are wealthy people. I think to have the kind of city that we need, we have to focus on everyone. As mayor, that's what I would do. I would focus on the least advantaged among us.
Thank you. Councilman Cooper.
Well, we need to go from It City to Great City. How do you do that? Is you take the money that's been created by the It City and you use it as a dividend to invest in neighborhoods, out into the county. Now, this is the reason you run for mayor, is actually to get that investment done. The mayor in Nashville controls the budget. Now, I know there's some reference to my influence on this budget. I think the mayor would agree I have very little influence on this budget. Didn't vote for it. But I want to create one as mayor that for the first time in years reinvests back into our neighborhoods. People will come to Nashville for the city, but they will stay for the neighborhoods. And our quality of life is based on the neighborhoods, and that requires sidewalks, stormwater, green space, community centers, all of these things that people are crying out to have. That's how we'll have a Nashville for everyone.
Mayor Briley.
I don't agree with you, Councilman Cooper. You've touted your experience as a Williamson County developer as being that's so special about you being our mayor. And we had 4 substitute budgets at the council on Tuesday. Your expertise surely would have given you the opportunity to present your own budget to the council and sent the city in a different direction. You elected not to do that. Leadership would have resulted in your taking a budget to the council on Tuesday. I don't know why you didn't, but you didn't. Now, when it comes to investing in our neighborhoods, what I announced yesterday was an 800-acre acquisition of new green space in District 1. That is an important part of preserving the quality of life in this community. It is important to the city, and I led by doing that. Now, I have heard from too many people that they can't get to their office downtown, that a wheelchair can't get on the sidewalk. That's why I asked the council to ban scooters, because that's about putting citizens over tourists.
Thank you, Mayor Briley.
Candidates, last summer, a report found that you need to make $80,000 a year to live comfortably in Nashville, but our median household income is just under $50,000 a year. More and more people, including Metro teachers, firefighters, police officers, can no longer afford to live in the city in which they work. How will you try to fix that? Mayor Briley.
So I announced just a few weeks ago an unprecedented, nationally acclaimed plan to build more affordable housing in the city of Nashville. It's called Under One Roof 2029. I'd encourage you to go to underoneroof2029.com and check it out. It's going to build more than 10,000 new units here in our community. It's going to have units that are suitable for folks who are currently living in public housing. It's going to have workforce units, and it's going to have market rate units. Additionally, on top of that, I'm working to make sure that we increase folks' wages. I announced a program called Nashville Grad that's going to help our high school graduates get through Nashville State Community College more quickly because only about 10% are getting through in 3 years. We've got to raise wages, and we have to focus on housing. That's the kind of change that I have been focused on as mayor. Day one, I started focusing on the change that was going to make Nashville a stronger place for everybody who lives here.
Representative Clements.
It's inexcusable that in Nashville, Tennessee, that two teachers living in the same household can't afford to live comfortably. Now, we must address affordability holistically, focusing on all the key factors, increasing wages and recruiting better jobs, addressing poverty, addressing access to public transportation, and addressing the serious affordable housing crisis in our city. Now, I take great issue with the current mayor who stood downtown and said there is not an affordable housing crisis. Too many people across this entire city are being displaced, and I plan to address it in 3 ways. First, I want to create a dedicated revenue stream for the Barnes Fund for Affordable Housing, seeking to put at least $50 million in it per year by the next 5 years. Next, create income source protections for those using Section 8 vouchers so they have free and equal access to rental units. And next, create a land bank so that we can put public property that is deemed surplus into the land bank in a transparent process with priority given to the development of affordable housing.
Dr. Swain.
My plan for housing is called blue-collar housing because it focuses on the population that's earning $50,000 or less, which is probably the median income for Nashville. And my vision is to work using the estimated 2,000 parcels of city-owned land, making some of that land available to contractors and developers who would build homes on city-owned land. And I'm told that that would get the cost of a house down to between $150,000 to between $200,000 and $150,000. And we can use new modular technology, the prefabs, and there are other creative ways that we can provide housing for people who work here so that people who work in this city can afford to live here.
Councilman Cooper.
Well, thank you. Well, I want to put my experience as a business person, as a developer, as somebody that has worked in real estate with large projects to work for the city. Because you're going to have business judgment to make it work. These are large investments. Land use is always a complicated part of making any big project work, and we need a large implementation of affordable housing stock across the county. Now, in this current proposal, which was kind of a one-page press release that came out after a year, if you look at it closely, it's $350 million, all of our affordable housing money headed to MDHA, and 1,000 new additional units is supposed to be the yield. Well, that's $350,000 a unit. Is that the right return on investment that we're going to need if we're really going to address affordable housing? I think myself and every other affordable housing participant has the same concerns.
Thank you.
What do you think is the single biggest infrastructure challenge facing the city, and how would you address it? Let's start with Dr. Swain.
I think sidewalks is one of the issues that only 19% of the city has sidewalks. I think that is a serious concern. And there are some pipes that feed our schools that have lead in it, that hasn't been addressed. So there isn't just one problem. There are many problems that have come about because the city is not focused on the right things. But sidewalks should be a priority rather than bike lanes.
Councilman Cooper?
Well, a couple of big ones. Of course, sidewalks are important, but intersections. Most of our fatalities and serious injuries come from a small number of intersections. They were identified in 2014, the 50 worst. Now, the state is responsible for some of these, but really only 3 have been worked on in that period of time. You have to go ahead and fix intersections and have turning lanes as well as sidewalks. And then there's another aspect that people don't really appreciate, which is our water department is under court order. It's going to need $120 million worth of investment every year just to stay in compliance with clean water. The greatness of a city is multiple large capital plans being administrated correctly and with full value for the taxpayer.
Mayor Bradley?
Well, transportation infrastructure is obviously clearly the most critical investment we need to be making as a community. And after Mayor Berry's transit plan failed back a little bit more than a year ago, I got to work the very next day, making strides for the city when it comes to transportation and transit. We've been working with TDOT to get better control over our existing resources because, frankly, most people are going to be in a car for the foreseeable future. We have been working along the Dickerson Pike corridor to add transit there, connecting up to the 386 corridor, Vietnam Vets going all the way to Gallatin to add a second regional transit line. We've been working with WeGo to make sure that as they assess their routes in the coming years, there is more frequency and duration on the successful routes and better stops for everyone along the lines. Now, finally, we can, without much city money, I believe, build a transit line from the airport to downtown with the help of the Airport Authority and the Convention Center Authority. We got to get something built. Enough talk. Let's go build something.
Thank you. Representative Clements?
Traffic is the #1 issue that I've heard the most about as I've traveled across the entire county. This is a quality of life issue. Every single minute we sit stuck in traffic, that's one less minute helping our children with their homework or doing the things that we love. Now, I plan to address this issue in 2 ways. First, by implementing short-term, cost-effective solutions. We'll start by evaluating lane shifts on major corridors coming in and out of downtown during rush hour. We'll look at improving our busing system and public transportation system, and then work to finally implement synchronized timelines. Now, over the long term, we need to build out a 21st century transportation infrastructure system. I'm the only candidate standing on this stage who's committed to a transit referendum in my first term in office. We cannot afford to wait any longer. This will require regional cooperation because it's a regional issue, and those in the surrounding counties will need to pay their fair share.
Thank you.
I hope we have a traffic and transit question because I have an answer for that.
All right. Now we're going to turn to metro schools for now. We have some great teachers, but the district has struggled in recent years. Fewer students, more failing schools, a dysfunctional school board, and increasingly low employee morale. We're losing hundreds of teachers a year and failing too many of our kids. What is your plan to turn that around? We'll start with you, Councilman.
Well, it is the #1 question in the county. We have to have a great school system if we're going to grow correctly. We have to have a school system that lets our children take advantage of the opportunities of the new Nashville. And it's going to require more money. So we're going to need more revenue sources and to get more money to the school system. And ultimately the solution is that more than half of Metro's new money needs to come to schools. And then schools need to spend more than half of its money on educator pay. Right now, only 27% of the school budget is going to classroom teacher pay. That's not enough. That has to be elevated over time. And all schools really need to get better the same way. Great principal that supports great teachers, that retains them and gets parental involvement. And that's what the mayor needs to concentrate on in bringing nonprofits together and convening and collaborating in going forward.
Mayor Brown.
So that question is right on the mark. that not enough kids are successfully graduating from Nashville Public Schools. But let me say this first. There are a lot of great kids finishing school, going on to post-secondary education and great careers. And I don't want the conversation about Metro Nashville Public Schools ever to diminish their successes. This year, 11 of the salutatorians and valedictorians in our system did not speak English when they started. So that's a real success for our community, that we are making progress in that regard. We also, on the other side, have about a 27% of the third graders are reading at grade level. And that is a tragedy for our city. That's why I've done something unprecedented, and I've been criticized for it. I have intervened with the board, and I am making a demand on them that they change the way they do business. They need to be more responsible with the money. They need to address priority schools, and they need to fix teacher pay. I'm committed to doing all of those, because if we do that, we can change that literacy rate. We can get more kids through the system successfully, and Nashville will be a fairer, stronger place in the future.
Representative Clemens?
Well, my children are in Metro Public School, and I have been in schools across this entire county, and there are amazing things happening in each and every school thanks to committed teachers who are doing amazing things with too little pay and too few resources. Now, it's time for Metro government and the mayor's office to stop pointing fingers and blaming everyone else. It's time for us to start taking responsibility and showing some leadership. And take ownership of what's happening in our community. Our children are facing adverse childhood experiences in our community that's having a direct impact on their performance in our schools. Metro government should take responsibility for that. Metro government should start working with the school board, forming a stronger partnership to execute a shared vision. My vision for Metro schools is to accelerate the rate of improvement across our school system.
Dr. Swain.
Well, I'm a product of public schools, and many of you know my story. I was a high school dropout, married at 16. By the time I was 21, I had 3 small children. I got a high school equivalency, went to a community college, and got the first of 5 degrees. And so I know what it's like to be poor and to struggle. And as an educator, I care about the public schools, and I want to be involved with holding the school board accountable. They get almost $1 billion a year. In fact, it can be rounded to $1 billion, and yet we're not getting the kind of results that we deserve. And we always hear every election year about more money for teachers' pay. They get the money, they don't give it to the teachers, the bus drivers, or the cafeteria workers. We need transparency, we need accountability, and as mayor, I'm going to make sure that they do right by everyone.
Thank you.
Another big problem facing Nashville's next mayor is juvenile crime. Kids are committing more serious crimes and at a younger age. We've seen children as young as 12 accused of carjacking and even homicide. Why is this happening, and how do we stop it? Representative Clemens.
Thank you. Youth violence is a symptom of many other underlying challenges facing a large part of our community. Issues like poverty, joblessness, housing instability, a lack of access to educational opportunity, and exposure to trauma and violence in neighborhoods. As mayor, I would take the Nashville Youth Violence Summit Report that was put together thanks to the great work of Judge Sheila Calloway, David Williams, and many others, and use the 6 recommendations set forth in that plan. It provided a perfect blueprint for how we can move forward as a city. But I would start with increasing access to educational opportunities, because education would be my priority. Additionally, we can improve and better facilitate the after-school programs in our community. Our faith-based community, our nonprofits are doing incredible work, and we need to better transition our students from schools to these after-school programs and keep them in a positive, safe environment between 3 and 7 p.m.
Dr. Swain.
I think that we need to work with families and also try to inculcate values in our young people. I think that the restorative justice that we hear so much about is political correctness, and we're not telling our young people what they need to hear. And in the juvenile system, they're being turned out, they commit serious crimes. I've spoken with law enforcement, with the sheriff. Many young people that have committed serious crimes are turned out, they're back home before the police officer fills out the report. That's wrong, and it's unacceptable, and some of our judges are just too liberal when it comes to holding young people accountable. As mayor, I would work with teachers, I'd work with parents, I'd work with law enforcement, and I would work with young people. And young people need opportunities. Some of them don't belong in school. They need vocational opportunities. We need opportunities for all. I will work with a new solution.
Thank you. Councilman Cooper.
Well, nobody is doing better work than Judge Sheila Calloway. But when youth come to Judge Calloway, it's too late. We need to get there first, and that's going to require after-school programs, apprenticeships, and support for nonprofits that are doing great work in this space. And how do you support nonprofits? You make it easier for them to get grant money. You make it the requirements of participating with schools and with metro government, you make that easier. You go ahead and make youth the focus, because ultimately there's no higher payback. Every child that ends up on the wrong path is a huge cost to society, and when it works out, a great blessing if we can just pull everybody back and get them moving in the right direction. There's really nothing in government that's going to be more important.
Mayor Braley.
Well, I don't think it's ever too late to intervene in the life of a child, and I think we all up here admire and love Judge Sheila Calloway and everything she is doing for the children in our city. And so that's why I've been working with her to make sure that she gets the resources she needs. A young person's first encounter with the juvenile justice system is normally not something serious. It's normally skipping school. And that's generally a sign of something bad going on in the family or in the home or with the child. And so Judge Calloway needs more resources. She needs a different facility to be able to better assess those young people. And I'm committed to making sure she gets it. We also need to change the way we're policing and get more focused on neighborhood policing, because we know, we've seen at Casey, it actually does a lot of difference in terms of reducing crime, especially juvenile crime. Finally, today I was visiting with young people in the Opportunity Now program, a program I run, because we know that getting a young person, 14 to 24, their first paid job has great impact on their long-term success. So we got to get jobs for young people too. That's what Opportunity Now is all about.
Thank you, Mayor Braley.
Well, candidate, speaking of policing, Metro Police Chief Steve Anderson has faced criticism in recent years with the African-American community in particular for his handling of 2 high-profile officer-involved shootings. Do you support Chief Anderson, and if elected, would you keep him in his current position? Mayor Braley.
Policing is obviously an area of concern across the country, and we are making changes across the country in terms of how we're policing. And we're well along the way in terms of getting body cams deployed across the city. We've selected a contractor, and they're being deployed even now as we speak. They're out there. We are working to get them deployed. As I said before, moving towards more of a neighborhood policing is the way we ought to go. We actually have seen the number of car stops, drop pretty radically by almost 50% between 2012 and 2017, moving away from that stop-intensive way of policing. I don't agree with 100% of everything Chief Anderson has done, but I support him.
Representative Clemens.
973 days have passed since the Driving While Black study was released, providing clear data that action should have been taken since that time. Unfortunately, since that time, we've had a failure of leadership in Metro government. We have not seen a culture change in our police department, and we have not seen any implementation of body cameras. Unlike Mayor Braley and Councilman Cooper, I supported the Community Oversight Board from the beginning. Unlike Mayor Braley, no one is guaranteed a job in my administration. Upon taking office as your mayor, I will sit down and evaluate and discuss the issues facing Nashville and do what is necessary to restore the trust between our community and the police department, because their job is to protect and serve. but the community needs to feel protected and served.
Dr. Swain.
As mayor, public safety would be my #1 priority. Over the past few weeks, I've traveled around to the 8 precincts, police precincts, visiting their roll calls where the officers change shifts, talking with officers, and one of the things, and there are 3 shifts, one of the things I've learned is that there's poor morale, there are severe shortages of law enforcement officers, and there's a need for new leadership. And so I would not only ask for Chief Anderson's resignation, but I would set up a committee that had representation from the police department, from the community. I would sit on it. One of my degrees is in criminal justice, and we would select a new police chief. I think we can do better, and so it's not just about what happened with the shootings and Chief Anderson. He has lost the respect of many of his men, and he's been chief long enough, and we need change.
Councilman Cooper.
Well, this discussion is about who should be mayor, not about who should be police chief. It's about who's going to appoint this chief and the next chief and how you're going to create a police force that is as diverse as the community. Now, the police force, let's just say it's in trouble. A lot of people have left. There's been up to 130 vacancies, almost 10% of the force. It's $75,000 to retrain a replacement for that. And in the meantime, from 2014 to 2018, the murder rate doubled in Nashville. So it is a matter that we have to make priority #1 as public safety. We want to go to all these other goals, but you have to have safety first from that. And we are going to have a new era in our relationship between the community and police. Part of that is losing quotas and getting back to community policing and having a force that is integrated beautifully within the community.
Last week, Mayor Briley announced he wants to temporarily ban scooters in Nashville. Do you support the ban, and under what conditions would you allow scooters to return? Let's start with Dr. Swain.
I do support the ban, and unless they can show us that they can protect the safety of the riders and the public, the ban should remain permanent.
And Councilman Cooper.
Well, scooters, I think, a little bit like cherry trees, are a little bit of a symbol for Nashville that has the tourist economy kind of taken over in sort of an unregulated way because our regulation has been inconsistent. And in order to have scooters, you do have to provide safe access for them. So that's going to be protected bikeways. Are we willing to commit to that level of infrastructure in order to have the scooter? Until we are, we have to be very careful. We have to err on more regulation rather than less. And how are you going to have scooters downtown if we have sold the parking space right of way in downtown, which seems like it's going to be completely vital if you're going to have any other transit multimodal options going forward. But as for scooters right now, they're too unsafe. The emergency room doctors would all agree we can't go forward the way it is now.
Mayor Briley.
Well, perhaps someone in your family doesn't drive anymore and uses the sidewalk for their only means of transportation, or uses a wheelchair and needs to get around downtown. I think you would agree with me that the scooters are completely and totally unacceptable for them. And that's the facts right now. There are people who use wheelchairs downtown, and their right-of-way, their ability to get to their jobs is blocked. And so that's why I called on the council to rescind their previous plan, the failed experiment of scooters, and pull them off the streets. I think it's important for us to acknowledge that people use our sidewalks for things more than just going to a bar. It's not what they're only used for. Now, in the future, if they can prove that they're safe, and if we can feel confident that no one else is going to die after drinking downtown, then I think we could invite them back.
Thank you. Representative Clemens.
Thank you. Unfortunately, this appears to be about the 4th position the mayor has taken on this issue in about 4 weeks. Now, he's right. This is a public safety issue that affects everyone, not just the users of scooters, but those who rely on our sidewalks and our roadways. If we're going to truly ever have scooters and they're ever truly going to be a last mile option, then we first have to invest in the appropriate infrastructure for them to be a last mile option. Now, I support stronger enforcement of the regulations, and personally, I don't love scooters, and I don't mind scooters being taken off the streets. But my question is, why has it taken a year and a half to take necessary action on a public safety issue?
Thank you.
All right, now we're going to move to what we call the lightning round, and you've all been doing great on your time and your answers. We appreciate it, but we're going to reduce to 30 seconds for your response on this next couple of questions. Next year will be the 10th anniversary of the flood. Downtown is obviously much bigger and much more developed than it was a decade ago. With that in mind, do you support a downtown flood wall? Councilman Cooper.
Well, no, I have not supported this flood wall, and because we need maybe more than one flood wall. The whole county flooded when it flooded, not just one neighborhood. And we have to demonstrate a comprehensive approach to protecting us against floods. Now, this particular flood wall, I worry, was kind of the invention of a flood wall panel sales force and not necessarily what we should be enacting to protect this downtown, any other downtown, or any other neighborhood.
Mayor Briley?
Well, let's start with the facts. Climate change is real, and we are starting to see the effects of that more and more in Nashville and Middle Tennessee. And in February, we came very close to having the Wolf Creek Dam have so much water that we had up to 14 feet of additional water downtown. Just think of the difference between those two, between 2010 and 2019. So I do support a flood protection system downtown. I think the fundamental question now is how is it get paid for? Because I think there are serious questions about that.
Representative Clements.
Well, 2010 was certainly a tragedy, and we all have to recognize the impact that had on our local economy. And again, we are going to see more rainfall and more flooding. But if we're going to invest in a downtown flood wall, then the downtown businesses that will benefit from it should put some skin in the game and help pay for it. But before we even get to that point, we need to look at a workable model to see what impact diversion of waters from downtown will have on communities downstream, like the Nations and Bellevue and other parts of our city that will also flood.
At the present time, I would not be supportive of it, but I would be willing to study the issue. And I'd like to use the last part of my time to say that Representative Clemens and Councilmember Cooper, they borrowed part of my short-term and long-term plan for transit and transportation. And so I would urge people to go to my website and see my plan. It's such a great plan that other people are borrowing it.
Thank you.
This is another lightning round question. When you have friends or family coming to town, what is the one thing you tell them they must do well in town? Representative Clements.
Well, I advise all my friends coming to town to do the Holy Trinity of Nashville: music, arts, and parks. For music, Station Inn and Exit Inn. For arts, the Fisk University Exhibition Hall and Museums and the Frist, as well as Oz Arts. And for parks, Radnor Lake and Centennial Park are some of my favorites.
Dr. Swain?
It depends on who the guests are. I always take young people to the zoo. We go to Radnor Lake, one of my favorite places. We go, to the Science Center, and we go to museums if that's what the person wants. And so I love being in Nashville and the fact that we have so many places where people can go. So this is a great city, and it can be even better.
Councilman Cooper.
Well, our park system, when people come and visit me, if we can, we go biking. And we go to that spot where the Cumberland River meets the Stones River, which I really think is the most beautiful single spot in any county. And people are just beyond impressed that it exists so close to downtown Nashville. And it's accessible by bikes, by walking, by greenways.
Mayor Briley?
So I don't know why you wouldn't go to Tootsie's. I mean, I think you'd probably go to Tootsie's. I think you'd go to the Hermitage, because it is sort of unique in our city, very unique, in fact. I would say go to the Parthenon, because it is one of our preeminent parks here in Nashville. And then I look forward to the day, not very long from now, when I can tell them to go to the National Museum of African American Music at the corner of 5th and Broad, because that's going to be an important addition to the cultural landscape here in Nashville.
Thank you.
All right, candidates, we're getting to our closing statements now. You each will have 2 minutes for a closing statement, and since you've done so well on time, we won't mind if you go over a few seconds. We won't call you out, but we will begin with Councilman Cooper.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. So I'll do the math, and I'll tell you the truth. As I have on the council these last 4 years, this is the moment to rebalance our city's priorities. And we can find the solutions, the real solutions, to pay for the costs of growth. And you have to do this by focusing on you and on neighborhoods. Now, in the last 4 years, I've been on the council. It's a part-time job. I've been a business person who wandered onto the council, and I've discovered that Metro's tactics really are to employ neglect of communities, or cookie jar approach. And we have to end favoritism to favorites and get beyond that as a city. Now, there's some real changes that need to happen. Tourism needs to carry its own costs and to pay a dividend back to the city. That's why we went in for growth. We need that dividend returned. On transportation, we need a plan right now. We should not wait until 2025. We've done the studies, we've done the homework. We need a plan that's financially sound and delivers benefits to as many people as possible. This is the kind of investment that a great city makes, and a great city gets on with it. In affordable housing, we need a real plan that brings benefits and affordability as much as possible for any city in the country to address that problem. And then for education. For education, it is financially important to begin to address the underfunding of education. To do that, to get more revenue from more sources into the city, to get half of the city's new revenues into education, to get half of the school board spending to be on teacher pay, because teachers are the developers that we need to support. And our children need to be able to take advantage of the opportunities of this great new city. We get our finances right, our city's future is unlimited, but we don't need to sell parkland, we don't need to be privatizing parking, we need to protect what is unique. If you do this, we'll have an unlimited future. Now, this has been a wonderful job interview, and I want to ask for your support and vote, and I'm ready to be the right mayor for Nashville right now.
Thank you. Representative Clements.
Well, thank you for having us tonight and hosting this thoughtful discussion about the issues. I think we can all agree that we have several different positions on key issues facing our city. Right now, our city is facing tremendous challenges. As an honor of serving in the state legislature, I have had the privilege of working on the biggest challenges facing Nashville families. Right now, Nashville's not short on challenges. What we're lacking is leadership and a vision to move our city forward in an equitable manner. The challenges facing Nashville include an affordable housing crisis. We must increase the net housing stock for families across this city. We must also realize that housing will never be affordable for too many Nashville families. So we need to address the root causes of affordability and focus in on increasing wages, addressing poverty and educational opportunities. Public transportation and water infrastructure are significant issues facing our city as well. We're a 21st century city sitting on top of early 20th century infrastructure. We cannot afford to wait any longer to build a stronger foundation, not only for our city, but for our neighborhoods and our residents, because that is key to improving the quality of life across this city. And those investments don't just need to be limited to downtown. They need to be expanded out into the entire community, and that requires fiscal responsibility, and it may require some tough decisions. And finally, public education. There is no greater priority in our city than public education. That's why it's my top priority as your candidate for mayor. I am fully responsible and committed to making the tough decisions necessary to fully fund our pays, to fully fund our schools, and pay our teachers what they truly deserve, and make sure they have the resources they need to do their job. Because at the end of the day, we need to be working to ensure that every child across this entire city has an equal opportunity to succeed. My campaign is based on 3 core values that I learned growing up on the farm: equity, opportunity, and justice. I can commit to you as your mayor, I will do everything I can to ensure equity, create opportunity, and demand justice for all. And I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Briley.
Thank you.
Quiet, please. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I love this city. It's my hometown. And I was given the great privilege, the honor of being asked to step in a moment of disarray, of unprecedented change in our community. And I believe I have kept us moving forward, steadily forward, during the last 15 months. I believe that my hard work and my love of the city has really helped us heal from that moment. But I know, as I talk to people, I've spent a lot of time talking to folks. I'm in a unique position in this community to talk to both the businesses that want to come here and the families sending their kids to schools and the teachers. I know that people are hurting and that the progress we're making is not uniformly shared. I want you to know that. I want you to know that I understand that. That's why I've spent the last year trying to work on the things that will change the direction of the city, working on affordable housing, protecting open space, recruiting high-paying jobs to our community, starting a new program for our Nashville State Community College so more people can earn more money, because that is critical to success in our community. If you give me the chance to be the mayor for the next 4 years, which I'm asking you to do tonight, I will work as hard for Nashville as I have ever worked, and I will make sure that as we move forward, we don't just get bigger, we get stronger. That's what Nashville is all about. If we stick together as a community and don't divide, we will be stronger. We will have more folks coming out of Nashville State Community College ready to earn a third or 40% more. We'll have more salutatorians and valedictorians going to Ivy Leagues. We'll have more affordable housing. We'll have more open space. Please help me do that. I'm asking for your vote. Early voting starts July 12th, and the election is August 1st. Thank you very much for listening to me tonight.
And Dr. Swain. Dr. Swain.
We've all heard the expression, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. The candidates on stage with me are in office now. They have power, they have authority. If they really wanted to address these problems, they could have done more already. That is the problem. And so for this election, you need to make a decision. Are you going to continue with these politicians who are making election year promises, or are you going to try something new? I'm asking you to try something new. I am an outsider in the sense I've never wanted to run for office. I was drafted to run for office by people who wanted change. My background is 28 years in political science and law. I stand for integrity. I stand for transparency. I stand for efficiency. I will run this city like a business, and I will have in place a CEO and a CFO, top-notch people, the best and the brightest. I don't care race, gender, religion, or political party. We working together can move this city forward. And so I'm asking you to support me. I need your support. I'm not a part of a political dynasty like these candidates here. I'm not part of a political dynasty. I can't self-finance my campaign. It's a grassroots campaign. If you want change, then invest in the candidate who will deliver what she promises. I'm willing to give Nashville the next 4 years of my life. Join me. Let's make Nashville the great city for all of us.
Thank you. All the candidates tonight, we appreciate it. Reminder, early voting is July 12th. Election day is the 1st. Have a great night, everybody. Good
Good
night.
night.